So let's see the command part, which is the next step in our database communication part, which is creating a query. So creating a query is something which is same as creating a command, right? So as we are looking in the SQL server, right? So it will be a SQL command. So we will be taking up the SQL command to provide query with and execute for results. Right? Let's go back and create. First, let me create a simple string for query, and here let me create a query. So we have a database here. So let me copy the query over here. Select start. It is like we are selecting everything from the students table, right? And then let's create a command. We have a SQL command. Let me call it as CMD. Now here you can give SQL command. Now we know that SQL command will work with a query and a connection. Right? It needs a query string, right? The query part and the connection. Now the query part, which is here, you can see the CMD text can be a plain query, or also can be a SP, which is a stored procedure, right? So it can be any of these. So first let's see the query part, and then we will actually see how the SP will be called. Right? So let me call it as query here, command, and then we have to provide a connection, because command needs a connection on which it can actually run the query. Right? So let's see command connection as com. Now again you can see that your command is dependent on the connection. So if your connection is successful, then only your command can be executed. Otherwise, because it doesn't have any pathway to connect to database again, right? So that is why it's very important to have. It's very important that your connection is successful, and then you have the command ready to run that query. Now it's ready. You have provided a query, which is a plain query you have, and then you have a form, which is a connection, right? And which is actually connected to our database successfully. Right? Now, the next step is we have created a command. And the next step is execute. So execute here have got different execute methods in command. Now, anyways, execute is a method which is a method of your command itself, right? Because we are going to create a command and execute through command to get results. Right? So that is basic. But here we have many results which you can expect from an execute method, right? Because there can be different DMLs which you'll be using, right? Like as of now, we are using the select command, right? Which means we are trying to retrieve some data or retrieve some raw data, right? And use it. So which means we may be getting some table here, which contains some rows and columns, right? So in that situation, right, we have something called method execute reader. It's a method. Inside your SQL command, we will be using this method to retrieve rows and columns of the data. Right? Same way, let's say you are doing some insert, we'll be checking out that. The next DML, which is your insert or update or delete. Let's say you are actually trying to insert or delete some data. Right? Let's say I'm going to write a simple query where I'll delete one row, let's say. Right? Then whenever we write whenever we have a daemon with delete statement, which means we have to know how many rows got affected. That's it, right? Or whenever I insert data, I want to know how many rows got inserted. Or whenever I update data, I want to know how many rows got updated. Right? So that is the one which I want to have. So for that I don't need a output which carries a complete data set. Right? So for that it will actually we have one more method called execute non-query. Execute non-query is the method which will actually give you a return of integer. Now this int is number of rows, whereas an execute reader will return you a SQL data reader. Now it's like a reader, it will return a reader to you. Now this reader will actually give you a complete set of rows. Right. So that is the execute reader and execute non-query. Non-query is to run your insert. It's like, now this can be your select rows, select statement, which will actually return. Now this is basically when you return rows, right? And this is something which is mostly your insert statement or update statement or delete statement, right? Which will return how many rows affected, rows affected, or rows updated, right? And the next one is sometimes you may want to get a scalar output. Like let's say I'll say select star from so and so table, right? Which means I want to get how many rows are there. Anyways, I'm really using a select statement, but I'll be using no, I can't actually go for execute reader because it will be costly. Yes, it is not restricted that I can't go, or it is not something that not possible. Yeah, I can, even if I'm using select statement over there, right? Yes, I can actually obviously can go with speed reader, but here main intention is to get number of rows. That's it. Which means I just want a single scalar value. How many rows are there, right? Now here you can see, just let me just run your. Let's say I want to get root of star. Now say this is my table. Let me select this. You can see we'll actually get only one scalar cell, which is okay, students. Now this is something where I'm using select statement, but I always know that I'll get only a single value scalar. Right? So in that situation, you don't have to go for execute reader. You have something called execute scalar. Right? Where we know that it will always return a scalar return value. Right? So these are the three different methods which we have in SQL command execute. Right? So let's start with the execute reader. Right? Now you have a command dot. You can see you have execute reader. So this is a method which you have. Now you can see that execute reader will return you SQL data reader, and there are two overridden methods you have. You have an execute reader, and you can actually provide some behavior here, or you can directly give the execute reader. So let's connect with execute SQL data reader. So let me call it everything. this execution from the command will actually give you a data reader which contains, now this data reader is capable of holding rows and columns, sorry, multiple rows and columns, right, being actually returned by a query. So till this part we are done with executing a command, right, and now due to execution we got a result, right, and that result we are holding now. Now the next step is to process results. In this reader, as we know that it contains multiple rows and columns, right, which means in order to actually go through each and every row and column, right, you have to iterate through this reader, right, it's a basic thing to do. How can I iterate through this reader is the question, or how can I read each and every row and each and every cell, whatever I want here. Right? For that we will be using any loop as such, right, where I'll actually check the reader. There is a method called read, right? So SQL data reader is like, it's a one directional read. It will always, when I start reading row by row, right, when you actually call a method called read, then your pointer will be at a first row, right? Let's say I completed one iteration, right? And when I come back and say read again, it will go to the next row in reader, right? So SQL data reader is only one direction, you can't go back. Once you are done with the first row, right, you can't go back and just say again that I want to read it again. No, you can't do that. Because it's a single directional and it won't actually give you an option to go back and read it again. Because your SQL data reader is a connection oriented, and your connection should be active. And how data reader works internally is, let's say your select statement is written some 1,000 lines or 1,000 rows of data, right? Then what happens is it will actually, your data reader or execute reader will not get all 1,000 rows. Let's say it may get first 100 rows into reader. Now while reading your data, right, what happens is, let's say it came to 100th row and it's trying to read next row, right, 100th position, when it got back and it started reading, right, then what happens is, if it knows that there are 100 rows are done and the program is trying to read the next line, then again using the same function, it will get next 100. That's the reason why the connection is mandated for this reader. That's the reason why we normally call it as a connection oriented data set. So here, let's see how to read. So let me take integer some roll number, because you can see my first column is roll, and I know that roll number is of type. If you want to see, we can always go back and see the columns here, right? These are table, and open up the table and you can see column inside. On this table, whatever I can do, I'll have. You can see there will be some constraints, right? And you can see there will be some indices, right? Indexes in the sense we created a primary key, and primary key will have by default a clustered index, right? So this is a int, roll number is an int, because we actually made it as a primary key and the unique column value, right? So let's go ahead with this roll number. Now how to read is, you have a reader. So you have internal methods called get. Now you have many. You have get string, you have get int, right? So whatever is the type of your column, right, based on that you have to use your data type here. Let's say my data type in roll number is, let's say, integer, right? That's why I'm calling it that. Now here you can see you have to provide a column index. Let's say C, right? The column index is SE. The same way, let me take a string for the next one, I think that is the name. We have a reader dot get string of your first argument. Right? Same way, you have a string. I'm just taking one more, let's say parent. That's it. Right. So you have a roll number, name, and a parent, which we have here. We have taken as per their data types we are treating. Now let's print them. Phone number, now we have name, right? So we have a roll number, name, and the parent name here. So let's run this program. So now you can see here we were able to connect it, and you can see that we got the data, right? So from database we got the data for the students table, and we were able to read the data. And so here you can see I'm actually reading roll number, name, and parent name, right? Okay, so you can see we got roll number, name, and email ID. How did we get email ID in place of parent name? Right? You can see I'm using column index 2, but my column index 2 is 0, 1, and 2. The column index is email, right? So that's the reason why it got an email over here. So my parent actually name is the third index, which is the fourth column, right? So now you can see you got your roll number, your name, and your parent, right? And you can see that we actually got rows and columns data in it, right? That is the reason why we used SQL Reader, right? So this is how we actually read data, right, through SQL Data Reader. And you can see once everything is done, we actually close the connection, and that's it. Fine. So this is how we normally communicate with database. It's a simple program, right? Where we have seen everything on connection, creating a command, and executing a command, and processing results. Fine. Now let's see the next type of method, which is execute non-query, and see how to get it. So let me create a new class now. Let me call it as just non-query class. And here what I'm going to do, I can copy this main method and place it here, and let me remove this static. So here I have my program ready. Let me resolve this. So here I have a program ready, the SQL connection and everything is same, right? The connection state, resolve as data. Fine. Now what we are going to do is, let's remove all the remaining part here. Now this part is our connection, which is perfectly correct. You can use the same connection because I'm going to trigger the same database. But from your query part, it differs. So this query, what we are going to do is, let's do something which will update or do something which will return you number of rows selected. So let's use something called, let's use insert statement, right? Let's say insert we have we have already prepared a table. Let me call that students. So let's select the columns, whatever you want. Let's say I want student name, email, and so values. It's a student name. Let me give some student name here and email. Let's say there is some okay. So this is a simple insert statement. So normally let's do this and let's run this. One row affected, you can see. So this is the return which you are going to get. How many rows affected is a 1. This output you are going to get in our next type of method called execute non-query. Right? Now if you run this statement, you will see you get 3 different rows. Right? So let me copy this query. So which we wrote now to insert data. Right? Now here you have your data here. Now if you want to provide from command, right? From command line, if you want to read and then provide the data, you can also do that, not a problem in it. Right? Let's say I have things ready and I am going to take, let's say John 1 and let's say bedroom. I'm just changing readers here. And now my query is ready, the command is ready. Now what I'm going to use here is, I'm not going to use execute reader, rather I'll use execute non-query. Right? And if you mouse over it, you can see execute non-query will give you int output, which is nothing but your rows affected. Right? So let's take int. Let me call it as result. Right? And then let's print rows affected. So in this statement you have where you are actually getting rows affected and this. Now you can see here that you have let me run this program again. Let me comment this insert and now you can see there are 3 rows only, right? And what you are going to do, you are going to insert one more row from my program. Let's run this. So you can see rows affected 1, right? Because these are return which you got. And go and run this. Now you can see you actually got a row with that. Sometimes you may have to insert multiple rows also. Let's check this out. Let's say I'm going to loop on this. Right? So here let me get a simple row. Let's say I'm going to add some key details here. Where I'm going to right, I'm going to insert, you have a query, right, and let's say here I'm going to use my I value, let's say, right, and I'm just taking for John 1, John 2 or John 3, that's it. And then 1 by 2 and 2, and let me give this, let's give John ABC. Right? So here I am trying to run my query twice, right? So I'm actually planning to insert 3 different rows in it. Right? Now let's run this program and see what happens. You can see rows affected 1 and again 1 and 1. Let's go back into there were 4 rows before. Now execute this, now you can see 7. See the join 1, 0, 1, 2 and so on. Right? So this is how we get a scalar, we get value which returns the rows affected and we can use the arm. Same way, let's go ahead and see how to get the scalar. Let me create a new class. Close this. Let me call it as a scalar. So let's go back again and let me copy this main method because we can use the same method here. Then might have to change this and let me remove the static word. So here let me resolve this because we have to import or do using SQL file and also the data part, System.data. So these two are important. Save it up. Now the connection is ready. And now here, let's remove everything. We don't want all this, it's not here. We are going to use a query which returns some single data. Let's say you have select count of star from students. Now you can see it will return one single value. Let me copy this query. Go back, paste it. Right? And now you can see you have the query which returns some value. Right? Now here what I'm going to use, I'm going to use execute scalar, which will return you again an object. Now why it is written, why do you think it returns object here? Because your scalar value can be anything, right? Which means you are sure that you're going to get one cell as a return. Now that one cell can be anything. Let's say I'm going to use something called select top 1 of your student name. See, you will only one. You will always get only one cell and one column. That is the reason why with execute scalar will return you a scalar value. We have written it here. No, okay. This will return you always a scalar value, which is our type object. Right? So this is how you can see. Now you can see the name, we've done this query again now. So we have to convert it to int because it will return, I know what I'm going to get count from this. So that's why I'm actually returning this. Right? Now let's run this. Now you can see rows affected 7. It is not rows affected physically, it is count, right? You can see count is 7. Now that is the one which we had, which is rows 7. So we got it. Okay. So this is how you can actually get a scalar value, and if you want for this query, right, you can write this query and get the data. Let me copy this, and let's say I want the query. Right. Well, I know that I'm getting a string value, so let's make it string, and this will not be integer, rather it will be string. Right, because I'm going to get a student name. Let's run this. Now you can see you have a sample. In the top one name which we got. Right? So this is how you can have your data based on requirement. You can actually run your. So this is something which is. This is how we actually use different methods of your command, execute reader, non-coding scalar, to work with different type of tables. Right? Now let's see the next part, which is how can we run this with a stored procedure. Now what is a stored procedure? Now, so look at SP, right? So we normally have seen till now that we load all the queries in our program, right, and we are trying to run it through command. So what it does is, So this query will be transferred to the server wherever database is staying, right? Complete query. Now we have written a small query here, but in real time we'll have tens of hundreds of lines of a query which you may have to write, right? So if you write it to your C#, right, and if you try to cut and execute, what happens is it will actually transport the complete all characters of your query to database, which means it is going to take some bandwidth. And then when it goes to database, it will execute, which is like it will compile the query, right? You can see whether the query is correct or not, right? What does it mean compiling? Let's say I'm actually trying to get something wrong here, right? And whenever I run this, right, you can see it will give you an error, right? Which means before executing this on actual database, right, it will first compile the data, compile the query. So when it compiles, it will keep the the actual query part ready, that the query is ready, the query is perfectly good without any errors, and then yes, I'm ready to trigger the data. So that's why what happens when I click on execute, it will do compile, right, to check whether there are any errors in this query based on based on the table and everything, and then it will actually execute it on database. So these two things happens when we actually run a query from our code. Now we have an option that you can actually write your query directly on database, right, with some name for it. And from our C# code, you can just call that name of your query, right? Because we are going to connect to the same database, and same database, or in same database you will have queries with different names. You can create multiple queries with different names, which will be unique name, right? So we will be writing the complete query in the database itself here. So that is something which is called the stored procedure. Now you can see in your tables, right, under your databases we have a programmability where we have a stored procedure, right? Now stored procedures, which means it will be pre-compiled state, which means whenever you are writing a SP, stored procedure, right, it will actually keep it compiled and ready, which means one state is already ready for us. As soon as you take up that name and run it, right, it will actually take the compiled version of SP and then it will execute the query written with SP, and then it will return the result. That's what happens in this. So now let's write a simple stored procedure here. So let's say I want a stored procedure to get the data from your table, which is students table. Let's say I'm going to use this. And let's say I don't have any search. What I'm going to do is, we have something called create procedure, right? So before this, let's say I want to use school database, and then I'm saying create procedure to your procedure name. Let's say I'm going to say it as a SP underscore get details. Where is my SP name? And then we have as begin and end. Now this is a space where you can write your query. Let's say I want to take it as self start from students. But this is my SP ahead. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to execute it now. Just say F5 and your command is successful, which means now it will go and sit in your, you can see in your SP you have SP underscore get student details. Now you can have any name as such, guys, right? It is not mandated that you have this. I can just say student details, simple, right? Now your SP got created. Now once you create, like if you run it again, see it will say that already your object is already there. So from next time onwards, whenever you want to edit something, always say alter. Right? Alter the query based on the parameters. So let's run this and let's see. This is your command successful. Now let's get back here. Now let's remove all the queries. I don't want anything, so let's create a new class as such. Let me call it as SPs. And now from scalar, let me copy this. Now here let me remove this. So let's resolve it. Right. So it is ready with me now. So I have a connection string or connection with the database ready. Now here what I'm going to do, instead of the query part, I'm going to do the SP name. What's my SP name? It's SP details. Nice. Now, how does it know? How does my command know whether I'm actually providing a query or a SP here? Right? You have to actually set some parameters to command before executing, right? So that it will understand that whatever you are actually doing is an SP. Now for that we have some. So by default, if you don't give any parameters to CMD, it actually takes it as a normal query. But it is not a normal query. That's why you have to mention it as a. It is the one which you are providing is. So for that we have something called command type. So command type you can see you have a source. So till now whatever you have done is a plain text. It will actually take plain text as a simple query. Now it is going to take now it is going to consider this as a SP stored procedure and then it will run. As of now you can see that there are no parameters for this. Now why do we need parameters? Now we need parameters. Let's say here, let me write a simple query again, which is select star from students. Right? Now this will give you a right. Now that is what we have written in our SP. That I want all the student details, and I'm getting it. First, let's run this, and then we'll see. What are parameters we are saying. So from my program here, let me copy the execute reader part to data, right? Now I'm not going to use scalar here, I'm going to use reader, right? You have your SP command ready, and you have your execute reader where I'm reading data and I'm printing. So let's run this program. So here you can see I am giving only SP, not a query. You can see in this SP we are able to run this. Now you can see that we are getting all the data which are this was out, and I'm actually printing a roll number, name and parent. This is how we can call an SP. Now how can I test my SP from my window here? We can do that. Let me create a new query here. So we have an option called execute exec and your SP name. So let me take the SP name here. Right, I can see when you run this, you can have your data. These are your reading objects. Right, you have fine. So this is how you can actually do it. Now let's say in my query, let's go back to the query. Let's say in my students, I want to get the data for specific roll number. Then how can I query? I have something called where function. I can give where, let's say roll number is equal to, let's say I'm gonna take it as some 3, and then so you can see this is a condition I'm actually providing to the query which I have. So this is something, based on this condition it will retrieve my query. Then you can see I got a row only for the one whose roll number is 3. Now these type of queries, how can I call it from SP? So that is possible when you have something called parameters. You can actually provide parameters. Let's say I'm going to provide something called parameter here, which is roll number that you want to see. So this is a parameter I am trying to impose. Let me run this. Now your SP is ready to accept something. Now if you don't change your things here and then let's run this directly. See here what happens. It will give you an exception. It says visual function SP calculator expects a parameter called @roll number, which is not supplied. Right? So for that you have to supply parameter. Now how can I actually impose or send parameters here? For that you have again a literal method in your command. So CMD or something called parameters. In parameters you can have something called add. You can directly add, or let's say add with value. I'm going to take add with value. Now here you can give the parameter. The parameter is separate. You have to maintain the same name. One number, comma, let's say I'm going to do 3. Now this is how you can actually provide parameters. And then this is how you can provide any number of parameters. Right? Now let's say I will give a roll number, and let's say you want something else like the rating. What else do we have? Let's say it's parent name 0, right? Let's say I'm going to take parent name, which is privacy subtype varchar of 50, let's say. Right? With the comma you will actually provide mentioning varchar of 50. And run this. Now you are providing 2 parameters, which is student parameter name and roll number. Right? And we have to change these two where your roll number is equal to your parameter component. And your parent name, which is your student parent name, is equal to. It means you are providing multiple parameters to this. Let's execute this. When you have your roll number and student name, it needs not minimum, it needs all the parameters you have provided before running your store design. Right? Now, how can I provide that? We can have one more parameter. Dot add value of. Now my parameter name is student parameter name here. And let's say, in order to get the data, right, let me just go back and say parameter name is Ben. Let me take the same name, Ben, so that it will be it. Right, so this is how you add parameters. Now, even before this, how can I test this SP whether it is working or not? Right? Now let's go back to this and let's say your roll number is 3. Now you can give, how can I give parameters? Directly give space and start providing values. Right? And these are again, select this and execute. Now you can see you got 1, which means your SP is working fine. Let's go back and run this. Now you can see you got only one, which is 3 on that. Based on the value maybe you input, you actually get that data. Right? So this is how we can actually run MSP, right? Where we can actually provide multiple parameters to it. Now this is a this will be the same, right? If you want to actually run MSP for any number of parameters and whatever it is written. Right? So here based on your return type and everything, right, whether you are doing insert SP or update SP, they same, your command methods will be same again, right? You can actually use the same command methods whatever we are actually doing it for before. Right? So this is something about getting the values running the SPs, right? And about the complete area of X, how we achieve that. Now we have one last thing left, which is a data adapter or a data set. We'll see what exactly is this, because this is something which is again important. Now we know that data reader is a connection oriented one, right? Whereas a data adapter or data set is a connectionless set which you can see. So we'll see this part in our next class.